Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional League, Dynasty League, PPR League, IDP League, even Daily Fantasy Football League. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Ethan Orphe here for the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. Can't lie to you, the last 24 to 48 hours have been probably the strangest thing I've ever experienced in sports culture, national culture, my life probably. This forever will change the way I view the rest of my life. And I think many people are in similar situations as me, especially in America right now. This is the biggest topic in the world, and respectively so. It should have had national attention, given more national attention than it has been in Western society as it is currently right now. And that's generally just how things end up escalating. People wait until, it's kind of too late or it's at your doorstep. And now it's all about contingency plans and stopping certain things and, basically creating a stoppage of social interaction for an undetermined amount of time. But, the COVID-19 coronavirus is a big topic, and a lot of things have happened in the past 24 hours that honestly I could have never imagined. So, for instance, the NBA has suspended itself for at least the next 30 days. We don't know how long indefinitely it could be. The NCAA tournament is no longer happening. All of their tournaments have stopped. In fact, the Big East tournament was still playing at one point, and they stopped it at halftime. I think the most surreal thing about this was the NBA was about to play games last night, as in on a Thursday evening, and in the midst, they just stopped everything. Everything stopped. The arenas were let out. It's actually it was really scary for a lot of people because we really didn't know what to think about this. And then you hear Rudy Gobert is essentially, he tested positive. And then you hear about Donovan Mitchell. I guess hours later, he was the only one that tested positive out of the rest of that group. And of course, there's more testing, and we don't know how long Rudy Gobert had it in his system. And then the whole dialogue of how essentially he treated the virus like many others treated the virus, as far as the social interaction part and trying to separate media and players. And he was careless, and we all know this. He's also admitted it himself, but it's just been a wild 24 hours since then. Like now, NBA, NFL, well, not the NFL, the NBA, the XFL is no longer playing any more games. They are done for the season. That is actually crazy to think about. What are they going to do? Like, this was their inaugural season. They got to 5 games. Half the season was played. And that was it. Like, this is it. Like, what happens for next season? Will they have a next season? What do they do? The MLB spring training is done. Like, they are suspended spring training at least for the next 2 weeks until they can reassess. And I'll be completely honest, I don't think 2 weeks is enough time. And I think they're probably going to extend this for a while. NHL, similarly is suspending play. The PGA Tour is suspended. Literally every major thing in sports is suspended or on leave. The university systems at schools were in constant debate. At first, like, I live in Georgia, of course. So this was a big topic for the last couple hours, was that the USG, the University Systems of Georgia, at first said that they weren't going to close schools and they were going to continue on as need be. And then the backlash was so bad that within maybe even 30 minutes, not even an hour, they had to backtrack and say this is like, we have to close schools for whatever amount of time. Some are going strict to online, like for the rest of the semester. Some are taking 2 weeks off because of spring break is already upon us for most schools. So they're just saying stay home for an extra week as we plan this out and prepare for more things to come. But this is really, it's really scary, and it's also really, really telling. Like you are, if you're listening, I am a part of a historical moment in our lifetime that we never have, like, it's never been precedented. Like, the only thing that's ever been close to this was in 1994 with baseball, and essentially where in midst of a season, the players, they went on strike and there was no more baseball. There was no playoffs. There was nothing. I would imagine that the NBA would not want to just lose this season for good. But I just have a hard time believing like this is it. Like what do you do? Like, this is going to change a lot of the way we view things. People aren't going to, movies are being postponed and delayed, like premiere dates and stuff like that. Like, Hollywood is taking this very seriously, as they don't want, like, big movie budget box office films to bust because people are afraid to go out in public. So they're postponing these to, I suppose, save the bottom dollar, as most companies would imagine would do in the first place. But this is really, really, trying times. I am, not sure what is there for as a podcaster, as someone who likes to talk about sports, whose life revolves around the general cycle of sports. I don't really know how to take from this in the next 30 days. Well, I guess we'll have to see, but in those 30 days, what exactly do we do? Like, as sports fans, like, I guess play Madden or 2K or, to get the fix. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a massive void for at least a month. I think probably it will be longer than that. I just have a hard time believing that in 3 or 4 weeks, this will drastically get better for people, and that there's just going to be, people are going to want to gather within a month after essentially isolating themselves. And, the hysteria is already kind of hitting at a boiling point right now. Like, if people are going out to stores and stuff and buying stuff, or, supermarkets are preparing for limiting resources. It's getting hot, as I would usually say. It's definitely, people are not really mentally prepared for all of this stuff. And it's really showing, cause I wasn't prepared for it. I don't think anybody was. So it's definitely interesting to look at from just so many different angles. From a societal angle, just looking at how people are reacting to it. There's been a lot of jokes made online about it over the last few months about the coronavirus. And now that it's like, come home, there's still jokes, but now they're kind of eerie because in a certain way, we kind of have to, I guess, make ourselves more comfortable with certain realities of our life. And doing that through humor and comedy is, one of the many ways people do that. And I think, trying to make people laugh in a time that can be kind of scary is good. But at the same time, some jokes are not, I guess they don't land, so to speak. They're not good. But there's been a lot of good information to come out in the past 24 hours about, just what to do, how to manage yourself, what is, what information are false and what's not. Generally, I'm no health expert, of course, so I don't know all the ins and outs of what this could mean, but just reading national news and looking at different articles and things like that, this is it's a very, 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 very strong thing running through this world, and now really at the forefront of the U.S. and in Western society. So a lot of things are changing right now. And I guess that's and changing for the foreseeable future, because there's a lot of stuff that has to essentially be postponed or changed, that most normally is not normal for most people now. Like, we've been very comfortable for a long time. So I'm going to go ahead and take a break, and then we'll keep going.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, so continuing on, just thinking about, because this is a fantasy football podcast, what does this mean for XFL fantasy? I'm not too sure, just to tell you the truth. As honestly, as the fantasy season was going on, the XFL fantasy was really actually starting to pick up, in my opinion. I don't think it was gonna be somebody's mainstay. I saw it more as like a gambling kind of sport rather than just fantasy sport implications, but it was getting better as the season was going on. The season showed that with time, teams change and scenarios change, and you really were seeing the league really form and come to its own, as far as just what it was going to be about. And I was generally excited to see where the rest of the league was going to come through. In those 5 weeks, we really got to see some players really showcase some stuff that, could be NFL talented guys and could really make a chance and get a shot in the league. So like PJ Walker, for instance, he probably has the best resume in XFL to really make a push to go beyond and play in the NFL. And now, since the league essentially is done, so the inaugural season is suspended. They announced that it will no longer proceed with the remaining of its regular season since the league was rebooted because of the coronavirus outbreak. Currently, the XFL will not be playing its regular season games, and the league said in the statement, however, all players will be paid their base salary and benefits. For 2020 regular season, all XFL ticket holders will be issued refunds or credit towards future games. The XFL is committed to playing a full season in 2021 and in future years. So it'll come back. It's going to come back, but it's just really, really, it's really, really insane. Like, the move comes as numerous leagues across the country have put play on hold in order to limit the spread of COVID-19 and, other leagues. So like the NBA, of course, and NHL have suspended games indefinitely, while the MLB pushed back the start of the regular season by at least 2 weeks. And I'll say it again, like, I knew this was getting really, really bad when the NCAA, which I've been critical of NCAA before and how they handle stuff, and they usually are the slowest of the major sporting, I guess, ownership to ever. They always are about money. Like, the NCAA March Madness tournament is the biggest thing in college, honestly, as a money-making tool. Like, they make so much money from March Madness. It's actually ridiculous how much money they make. For them to cancel the tournament, they canceled winter and spring championships. They've canceled the SEC tournament. They canceled the Big Ten. They canceled the ACC. It's all of it, tournaments canceled. And then finally, March Madness, those tournaments were done too. In a matter of really hours, it's just ridiculous. Like, and it really felt like they didn't want to do it. Like, they even had the Big East play, like, they didn't want to do it. Now it's but it's not even a suspension, it's a cancelization. So it's really, really unsettling. In addition to the steps taken by sports officials, states and local governments have issued moratoriums on large gatherings of people. Washington Governor Jay Inslee, for example, banned any event with more than 250 people in Pierce, King, and Snohomish counties, a move that impacted the Seattle Dragons. So in reality, they were going to have to shut down anyway. And CNN has reported at least 124,000 confirmed cases of the virus worldwide, and that 4,600 have passed away. A suspension or cancellation of the XFL season felt inevitable, but at the end of the day, it's still shocking to me. So really, this is it for that fantasy season. So I guess the only thing, just to kind of make things a little bit lightheartedly, try to find some interesting things to talk about through this whole ordeal, is I suppose we have to look at who won XFL fantasy, who was the good guys around. So let's take a gander here. I think from the quarterback perspective, I guess you have to imagine that the XFL was really, really was getting on a roll. You saw guys like Josh Johnson really, really shine. And I would have been like, if I was playing for week 6, if it was still happening, man, like Josh Johnson was looking really, really good this season so far. He was throwing for 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions, league best, 106 passer rating. Johnson led the Wildcats to their second most touchdowns in the XFL at 18, and leads Los Angeles he would have led them against the 1-4 Seattle Dragons on this coming Sunday. He had a remarkable pro football history before landing with the Wildcats in the XFL. He ran quarterback best 4.5, 40 in 2008. So he's been around, and he's like, he's kicked around a bit. But it's really Josh Johnson would have been really cool. I think that if you look at, you have to talk about PJ Walker and the XFL, honestly. And you just have to believe that at the end of the day, those 2 guys at the quarterback position were really must-see XFL TV, in my opinion. And then it kind of just dwindles down from there, right? So, you look at Josh Johnson, and then you look at PJ Walker, you look at Tamu for St. Louis, and those are really your 3 guys at the quarterback position that you can essentially trust with your points, with your money. I would assume that's how I would look at it. Those are your big money guys. Just because at the end of the day, that's really all you can can look at and guess from quarterback position, because everybody else was kind of off and on. For a while, it was the Cardell Jones show for 2 weeks, and then Cardell, he got benched last week, so we don't even know. And then Seattle Dragons, they get their quarterback. They seemingly find their replacement, and it's just really, really insane. Like, every team has changed their starting quarterback really from the start of the season, except for one, and that's just because of an injury. You're just seeing a whole bunch of interesting things that were going on with the league. Defensively was getting a little weird, honestly. The DC Defenders were still ranked number one for their defense, which is interesting. And then second is Houston Roughnecks, and then the Wildcats, and then the Battlehawks, Renegades, Vipers, Dragons, and of course the Guardians were dead last still again. So you're just seeing a whole bunch of different stuff going on, from just how people perceive different teams, and really looking at what was gonna really come out for this week. Like, I'm really just still in shock, to be honest. Like, there is no more XFL for the rest of the season, so I really don't even know how to continue talking about I guess fantasy from a futuristic standpoint. I guess the good thing is the XFL will allow people to go for NFL contracts no matter what happens here in the next coming weeks. So that's great. I think people like Cam Phillips, who he was basically the best wide receiver in the league, has 9 touchdowns through the first half of the season. He was on pace for 62 receptions, almost 1,000 yards. You know, he was really, really looking good. So people might look at him as an NFL prospect. Eli Rogers and Rashad Ross, they just haven't looked good. And you know, since the start, they looked pretty okay, but in hindsight, they really just haven't been looking well. And honestly, they just kind of haven't figured it out. And then, you know, even a team like the Seattle Dragons, where for a while they looked good, like they've looked good on the field, but they just haven't been able to get any wins. So I was interested to see how they were going to push through, and if this week, if they didn't win, they really might have been out of the playoff contention. So it's a lot of stuff from XFL. But let's take another break, and we'll come back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Okay, so essentially, the fantasy football season and for XFL is done. Sports as we know it are at full hiatus. Even the NFL are no longer sending scouts, or some teams aren't sending scouts. Some are closing down facilities to further clean and disinfect their facilities before they allow people to come back in and work. And seemingly the world is just on a huge pause, or the Western world is on a huge pause at the moment. So what does that mean for us sports fans in the meantime? What do we do? So I guess I'm just going to start listing some stuff that can possibly be done with all this new amount of time, as you know, especially if you're a student and you're being, essentially held off of campus for the insurmountable future, or for 2 weeks, or however how much time they're telling you to go away for a little while. What do you do with your time? So I guess the best thing is to do what you enjoy, which is, if it's watching sports, I'm sorry, but you can go back, you can watch some sports documentaries like 30 for 30s, or you can watch some old games, some old championships, reading some sports books. Like, that's something I want to really get into, is reading about sports history and reading different books about sports. So I'm thinking about ordering the book of basketball, or looking up different sports writers and reading their books, just to, something that I'm interested in, and doing more of that. Because you could say, watch movies, watch Netflix, play video games. Eventually you're gonna be kind of out of that stuff, and you're gonna be searching for more things to do. So I think reading is something that will be very beneficial for a lot of people to do when they feel like they don't know what to do. And we're kind of going to go back to a lot of old school stuff for right now, because you just won't have as much, interaction socially outside for right now. Because no matter what people tell you, people are not going to want to be outside for quite some time, especially in larger settings. People are being sent home from work. Kids are coming from school like it's a break, when it's really not. And you got to figure out a way to entertain everybody. So one of the things was sports and a pastime. And since sports is no longer a thing right now, what can you do? So I say reading is one of the bigger things that you can try and do. Reading is key. So try reading. Try opening up some books, audiobooks, podcasting. If you're listening, you're already on top of your game. Podcasting is a great thing to listen to, great thing to get into. Podcasting is a wonderful, wonderful thing to be involved in. It gets a chance for you to share your voice, find your voice. Podcasting helped me find my voice and find a way to share what I know, what I'm interested in, talk about what I love to do, what I love to be around, more accessibly. And every day I'm thankful that, I'm able to do what I'm doing. But podcasting, reading, writing. Writing is a really, you'd be surprised how good you can be at writing once you sit down and try it out. Or how much writing is an actual skill when you sit down and really try to write, either creatively or editorially. Writing is not, writing is kind of like the skill that it's kind of like a basic skill that humans need to kind of maneuver around the world, reading and writing. But, not everybody's 100, like a top level writer or editor in chief for, Times or the New Yorker or whatever. But at the same time, not everybody is a writer for CNN or for SNL or any other major network. But you can still write, and you can be creative. You can write stories. You can write about whatever you feel like going on in your life. And journaling especially. I'm a big proponent of journaling your life, as a lot of things can change, and sometimes it's good to get your thoughts out. And I think journaling is one of the more healthier practices that you can really get involved with, and really go down the rabbit hole of journaling. And it can be really healthy and therapeutic for people. And I don't think a lot of people do that in general. Like, I journal not only just for my personal thoughts, but I journal for just plans of how I want my next month to be, or what I want to do. And it really helps you come up with a game plan for how you want to maneuver in your life. So journaling is a big thing that I would suggest, try and do it. At least if you can journal for 5-10 minutes a week, and really sit down some time to write about what's been going on, at least on a weekly basis, man, I guarantee you your life will be better for it, and you'll be a lot more organized with your thoughts, and you'll remember a lot of stuff a lot better. You'll remember a lot better about things that are going on, how you've been feeling. Things won't be put to the wayside, because we live in a society where things really do fly by, and it's just on to the next thing, and everything is so instantaneous that you kind of just dump away from everything else that's going on. So it's definitely something that I would be a proponent of, is journaling. The next thing is, I suppose, finding a new hobby. So that could be, like, for instance, some people like puzzles. Some people like cooking. Some people like exercise. Some people are really, really into sculpturing. Like, another little tidbit about me, I was an art major for a long time, and I'm still would consider myself an artsy person. I like the arts, I like the studio arts. I was big into sculpture. I haven't done it in a very long time because, my profession and just what I do now, I haven't had the means or really the time to do it, but I still love the idea of sculpturing, and some people do that as well. So finding a hobby that you may be interested in getting into and learning about it more and more, I'm sure you'll have time. YouTube is a very valuable tool to learning new skills and new talents, and finding new things that you may, in fact, actually be interested in doing. So, this is all to say that, at the end of the day, it's not just run through all the Netflix library, all your Hulus, and then when you feel like you ran out of stuff to watch, which honestly is not true. There's always something, there's just so much content, but, there are other ways to preoccupy yourself, occupy your time. There's ways to take your mind off of this whole thing, and, cause you can watch as much news and, read as much articles on, COVID-19 and such. And honestly, it will make you feel a little bit down. It will make you, feel a little depressed, but, you have to keep pushing forward in life. So the best way to do that is kind of try and distract yourself and remind yourself what you do enjoy in life and what you like to do. So, reading, journaling, writing, of course you can watch TV, or you can play video games. You can watch old movies. You can make a podcast. You can do whatever really makes you take your mind off of this whole thing, or keeps you busy while you're out of work or out of school. So, maybe there's a silver lining to this point, to where a lot of people end up getting really creative in times of stress and duress. Like, you see a lot of artwork, a lot of music, in times of mass, I guess, in mass sadness or things like this, and tragedies. A lot of beautiful things can come out of it. So, so everybody just try to do your best to stay as positive as possible in this sort of time. And that helps when you have stuff to look forward to doing and stuff to keep your attention. That's definitely something that you should try and seek out to do. So we're going to go ahead and take another break here, and we're just going to continue pushing forward.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered. Listen. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, so before, I believe maybe even 2 days ago, I reached out to my to my good buddies that I've known for at least 10 years now. I've been playing fantasy football with them for at least 10 years of my life. And I made a very strong decision that day that it is indeed time for me to return into the fantasy commissioner ranks. I retired from fantasy commissioning about a year ago, 2 years ago. I said I was done with it. You guys can go kick rocks or whatever. Not really, but I was burnt out. I was mainly commissioning my league for so long, and I really wasn't having fun doing it as much because really can't make everybody happy. Like I mentioned this on the last podcast. You can't make everybody happy, and then when everybody's not happy for 10 years, everybody has something to complain about the league and, trying to expand, trying to downsize. You try all this different stuff, 1 year you may try doing a keeper league, and then maybe it's like you've known these people for so long, you're like, maybe we should run into a dynasty, but then people are like, oh, I don't know about this or that, or, trying to put in the independent IDPs, like, individual defensive players. That put a nail in the coffin for me. We tried that, and that just, the scoring was just all out of whack. People were not feeling how it was going. And honestly, it just kind of killed my drive to be a commissioner. Even though I still enjoyed fantasy football, I was just like, man, maybe I just want to pay my money and just leave it up. But as more and more, as I was playing in these leagues and being in this league one, this other league, and just being badly commissioned, like you would just see things that you'd be like, if I was a commissioner, as a former commissioner, you just know this is not going to work. Or, oh no, you cannot allow this because you are going to create a firestorm in your group chats. You're going to create a firestorm in your email threads. You are messing with the integrity of the league, this, that, or the third. And after a while, you just get kind of tired of it, right? You just see a lot of things that really, really irk you. For instance, me and my friend group, we call it selling. Many people call it selling, but essentially intentionally throwing seasons or, potentially giving people players that are really good for a general price because, you have no reason to continue playing. Your season's done. You went like 0-7 and, it's over with for you essentially. Or maybe I should say 0-8 because you can kind of come back from 0-7 in fantasy. You can make a playoff spot and make a push. But generally people have really, really bad loss or win-loss records. Some people can be really, really grimy and get involved in some stuff that they're not supposed to do. So like trading for putting their whole team on the trade block and saying, this guy's available, and which is fine, really. It's fine if you want to do that, but the trade has to make sense. And 9 times out of 10, if you think your season's done, you don't care if the trade makes sense. You do not care about what your returns are because you already feel like your team is not good anyway. So you're just going to take whatever offer somebody offers you up, and you know what's going to happen. The guys that are fiends, the guys that are in the waiver wires, the guys that have set up the draft profiles, had the spreadsheets out, the hardcore fantasy guys, they are foaming at the mouth. They're sitting like hyenas in Lion King, just waiting, chewing on bones because it's week 7 or week 8 in the NFL season. Nobody's on the waivers right now. The waiver wire boom is low. And all of a sudden you're just like, ooh, baby. We gotta wait for the quitters. Gotta wait for these guys, weak wills. And the weak-willed end up start throwing out scraps saying, hey, I got Julio Jones on the market. I'm just saying, no, I don't really know what's going to happen. I'll field out the offers. I'll feel out the offers. Send me your best offer. Man, you're 0-8. You're not trying to win. And what's worse is the guys that are the real scammers. This is what the real guys. So say if you're playing, like you're in a kind of a, low money league, like most people are generally, you're not in high stakes fantasy game playing, somebody would be like, hey, I put in $20 in the league. I'm not going to win it. My investment of this money, or not really investment, because if you put money in fantasy, it's not an investment. You're gambling. It's not money that you can expect to come back to you. You have to be prepared to lose that money. And a lot of people who play fantasy regularly, some of them are not always mentally prepared to lose money. So what they do is, when their season's essentially going down the toilet and they are not having fun, their first thing in mind is immediate regret that they put in how much money, $20, $30, $40, $50 in the pot. So what they start doing is they see their best players. They'll start getting into private messages, start sending out private emails, and just start auctioning off their players to the highest bidder, saying, hey, right now, if I give you this player for $30, essentially guaranteeing you either the number one seed in the playoffs or even the playoff wins or whatever. Fantasy football is not always 100% guaranteed, but your odds of winning highly go up with the better players you have. So giving up better players for money, not only to get their money back from putting in, but the people who go out and buy these said players, essentially buy a trade, they're willing to do that because they feel like they may have put in $30, $40, $50 in the pot and they have to put in another $50 to secure the win. They still come out on top. Plus, they make a profit. So they're saying, why not? Why wouldn't I do that? And that's the problems that, I've been running into in this fantasy world, to where it's just getting tough to play in people's leagues. I love fantasy football, but it's when you're speculating if there's collusion, if people are trading players for money, just to win leagues and secure dubs, it really starts to get steamy in those group chats and in those message boards, to where you're just like, I'm not comfortable being in here because I just don't know what to do. You may not have any proof, and that's the problem. You won't have any general proof, and there's no one's going to kick somebody out of the league for it. You can't stop the league, but people will definitely, there's going to be words said, there's going to be threats made. It's not going to be pretty. But it's not like it gets to the point to where you feel like you want to have an investigation in fantasy football. People invest a lot of time and effort and money to do it the right way. And then people start doing it the wrong way. So there's that issue. And then, when there's not sometimes just bad trades, man. And some trades really, really just skew the league so badly to where you're just like, how could you gotta veto this, right? You have to, and one party is going to be upset, the other party isn't. But if it threatens the integrity of the league and the parity of the competition, it just may have to happen. And it's a really, really controversial opinion. And it's very controversial, I guess, talk about in fantasy, because on one end, you're just like, if the guy makes a bad, dumb trade, he makes a bad, dumb trade, that's on him. But that's just for the sake of competition, sometimes you have to step in my opinion, as a commissioner, and be like, this cannot happen. The whole league should not have to suffer because somebody made a dumb decision, or somebody's getting fleeced so badly that essentially affects the rest of the league. This isn't trading someone like Jaquez Rogers essentially for, Le'Veon Bell in his heyday, or Saquon is sacrilegious. You can't allow this to happen. You're allowing that? So that's why I decided to come back, because I now see that the world needs better commissioners. And shout out to the good ones. All right. So that's my take, really. So here we are at the 40th minute mark. We're going to take another break and we're going to come back.
you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, so as the COVID-19 virus still goes around, the NFL essentially is still basically operating as if they're still going to start the new season on the 18th of next week. So we still have some news going around. People are still signing deals. And I guess in my opinion, I think this is fairly a good thing, because at the end of the day, they're not playing any games. You can talk on the phone and make deals and sign deals. So in reality, it's a nice bit of distraction from all of this. So, with that being said, we're going to go through some latest signings, some bigger news, and what's been going on. So, Danny Trevathan and the Bears agreed to a 3-year deal. So he won't be a free agent in the new league year, commences in a week. The linebacker agreed to terms with the Chicago Bears on the 3rd-year extension through 2022. NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport reported Thursday night. The terms of the deal are not yet known, and Trevathan was slated to become an unrestricted free agent after playing out a 4-year deal signed with the Bears in 2016. The last time the linebacker hit the market, he was listed as number 88 on the NFL's top 110 free agent list. Less than 2 weeks away from turning 30 years old, Trevathan is now the middle of Chicago's defense for the next 3 years. In his first 4 seasons as a Bear, Trevathan played 46 games and started in 45, racking up 6 sacks and 327 tackles. He played 9 games and recorded 1 sack last season, missed nearly half the campaign with a left elbow injury. Trevathan will return to the Bears defense that ranked 4th in points allowed and 8th in yardage allowed last season, but regressed from its league-leading performance in 2018. Next season, Trevathan will continue to play out alongside Roquan Smith, go Dogs, as Georgia people would say, in the middle of the defense, and be flanked by edge rusher Khalil Mack and Leonard Floyd as the Bears seek to return to the postseason after a year away. However, he is now unlikely to be joined by Nick Kwiatkowski, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, in impending free agency and Chicago's 4th leading tackler in 2019. So the Bears were 8-8 in 2019. Seemingly, it wasn't really their defense that was the issue, even though they weren't as strong as they started out in the year. But they were good enough definitely to push through the playoffs if their offense was also, consistent. So maybe the Bears are doing these deals preemptively to prepare for the free agent market for some of these offensive weapons, and maybe even forward to the draft, so that way they can look for their next guy, because Mitchell Trubisky in 2019 was 3,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and 6 passing yards per attempt, which was last in the NFL. That's not good. So I couldn't imagine that they're not talking about with Matt Nagy about where to move forward with them. So that's the first bit of news. Next news is another 3-year deal, $15 million extension for Bills offensive lineman Quentin Spain. He is staying in Buffalo. The guard signed a 3-year deal with the Bills worth $15 million. Spain came to Buffalo after beginning his career in Tennessee, where he started 48 out of 50 games, which he appeared. Spain was a solid guard, not playing at all pro level, but not a liability. Yet Tennessee decided to let him walk in free agency, and the Bills picked him up in 2019. So Spain found his way in Western New York, signing a 1-year deal. In his first season with the Bills, starting all 16 games, Spain allowed just 5 hits on Josh Allen, which is huge, and didn't surrender a single sack in 2019, which is also really, really good, giving up only 29 pressures on 633 pass drops. This will help Allen continue, becoming a better player. And essentially, this deal is to secure your quarterback for the future. So the Buffalo Bills believe that Josh Allen is their quarterback for the future. So whenever you're investing in offensive linemen like this, you believe that this is your window to really push for playoffs, contentions, and things like that. And you believe what infrastructure, should I say. So it's an interesting tidbit of news. Whenever I see offensive lineman signings, I look directly at the quarterback and see what's happening, because typically that's the first place that's investments in not only your team, but also for your quarterback. Another news, Jimmy Graham has been cut by the Packers after 2 seasons, so he will be an impending free agent. So that's interesting to me, as you know, I remember the good Jimmy Graham days, the Saints. The team announced Thursday that the 10-year vet who signed a 3-year, $30 million contract with the team in 2018 is now cut. He's played all 16 games for the past 4 seasons. In 2019, he started in 10 of those contests and contributed to 38 receptions for 447 yards and 3 touchdowns. In his first year with the franchise, he started 12 games, had 55 for 636 and 2 scores. He's played in 153 of possible 160 games with 111 starts, and boasts totals of 1,000 receptions, 7,883 yards, and 74 touchdowns in his career. Third-round draft pick out of Miami in 2010, Graham has logged a lot of miles on his body, spending his first 5 years, of course, with the Saints and playing 3 years with Seattle. He has played in 8 career playoff games, including 2 for the Packers this past season. So he really, this is interesting. So Graham's career has been went really, really hot, and then trajectory really changed when the Saints traded him to Seattle. And honestly, I didn't know if it was because of the Seattle system that it didn't work out, but it's interesting to see that he's back on the market. So maybe Saints have been kind of docked as potentially a team looking for another weapon, maybe as a tight end spot. So you don't really know what's going on there, but we'll definitely have to check in and see what exactly that's going to happen there. But I'm interested to look at that. I got one more for you, another tight end, which is Jordan Reed. So Jordan Reed, ex-Redskin, he was visiting Seattle at I believe March 12th. So he hasn't played a regular season down in over a year, but that's not keeping him from exploring his options. He was released by Washington less than a month ago, and now he's visiting with Seattle. Reed last played in 2018, appeared in 13 games, catching 54 passes for 558 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he began the year in 2019 with a concussion, and he was basically kind of plagued his whole career with that. Still, he's pursuing NFL employment despite all the head injuries he suffered. And he talked to Seattle, who recently signed Greg Olsen, and also featured promising pass catcher Will Disley, or at least sitting down with the athletic Reed, and we'll just see what happens. As he's 29 years old, so he's not a spring chicken anymore. And everybody's, Jordan Reed was a guy that a lot of people just wanted to make happen in fantasy. He was a big target. He was a part of that Jimmy Graham era of time where Jimmy Graham, for Vernon Davis, those type of tight ends were really hot and high commodities. But, they were the new trend of wide receiver tight ends that really didn't block anymore, but they were more like wide receiver threats in the offense. back in the early 2010s. It was really hot. So, we'll just see what happens on that forefront of the news. And then, of course, the NFL, multiple NFL teams are suspending travel due to the coronavirus outbreak. So I do have to talk about that. So Washington Redskins were the first team to announce that they have suspended all pro day travel, which includes all their scouts and coaches. And then following teams have announced that they've suspended travel for their scouts and coaches in the list. So Atlanta Falcons, Buffalo Bills, Carolina Panthers, Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, Jacksonville Jaguars, Kansas City Chiefs, Los Angeles Chargers, Miami Dolphins, Minnesota Vikings, New York Giants, San Francisco 49ers, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All those teams have essentially done that. There's been a lot of different news sources responding to different things in sports, but that's the gist of all of that. So we're going to take our final break here, and then we're going to get into our last segment.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, so just bear with me because this last segment might get a little bit strange, a little weird because it's really not sports related, but it's really hard to have sports related content when in reality, there's not a lot of sports going on. So I'm just going to try and see where this goes and just bear with me. So, I want to talk about the shows I've been watching. I've been watching a lot of different television, a lot of different shows. Fun fact, I love giving these. It makes me feel like I'm connected to you guys, but, I love anime. I love animated television. One of my first podcasts I ever created was a show called Anostalgia, where I talked about old animation from the 90s and, furthering on talking about anime and different, Eastern animation styles and things like that. So, I love the genre. So I recently just finished season 3 of Castlevania on Netflix, which honestly I have a lot of thoughts on. So I'm just going to give 3 little tidbits of my thoughts on Castlevania season 3. So here we go. First things first, and maybe I'll do a little rankings thing because that's what most people like to do. So if there was a number 1 draft pick for Netflix animation and what they've been able to do with their anime, I guess Bay and Trey, when they got Attack on Titan back in 2013, 14, which kind of really put anime, not to say it put it on the map. Anime has been popular for a very long time. But for popular culture to really, really being able to be, anime was wildly more accessible after Attack on Titan was a huge Western success. We don't really have a lot of Western successful animes. Or by Western success, I mean, they don't have a lot of success in Western culture. Typically, only a few ever really break the mold, especially for the genre that it is. But Attack on Titan was a giant success. It got my sister into anime. It got a lot of people who typically are not anime watchers into it, and thus really got into the genre, and now they've devolved into being fans of whatever anime they choose to watch, whatever. But that was the one that really took off, and then Sword Art Online was another one that really was big in Western markets. And since then, Netflix has really been a big player in anime. So has they have their own originals now, which essentially means that they buy the rights to put it on their service first, and then it kind of gets released differently from their point on. So they were big players within that, and now they have their own created content. This is not technically an anime because it's not made in Eastern like in, Japan or Korea. But it's very anime inspired. It's kind of like Avatar: Last Airbender, which one is my favorite shows of all time. Like a perfect series. If you have not watched it, please give yourself the time of day. As you know, we have a lot of time on our hands nowadays. Take your time, watch that show. Come back to me. If you go out and watch Avatar: Last Airbender, message me on Twitter. You guys know the Twitter. GSMC _FFB is, that's how you reach us out. So if you see the show, let me know. Regardless, Castlevania. So Castlevania is probably the second overall pick as far as the animation pool for Netflix, and it's really not even close. The first season is so well done. So well done. It's so slow. And I was just like, well, it was not just slow, but it just really made you enjoy every character. You really care about Dracula more than really anybody, because Dracula's just depressed. He doesn't like humans. In fact, he's setting the world ablaze because, humans killed his wife. So, and the wife was the one that really got him to trust humans in the first place. So, he's setting the world ablaze in retaliation and basically putting a war on humanity. And then season 2 happens, and season 2 is just all about, Dracula's court, the people of his inner circle that he trusts. And these people basically betrayed him for the most part. And, it's just a lot more devolving things coming about from it. And, of course, if you know anything about Castlevania, there's like a Belmont family where they're a generation of, I guess, monster hunters, and they kill monsters, and that's what they do. They pass down knowledge of killing monsters, how to do it. So vampires are technically monsters in the series, so they learn how to, kill vampires. And Dracula's son is also involved, with half vampire, named Alucard, or Alcard, which is Dracula backwards. But they team up with a speaker, which is basically kind of like a scribe, but of languages, and knows all this, that, and the third. It's just really, really well done. But season 3 is interesting. For one, there's 3 stories really going on at the same time. It's kind of Game of Thronesy, which I enjoy because I was very late to the Game of Thrones train, but once I got on, I was hooked for a very long time. And side note, have not finished season 8, or did not watch season 8 of Game of Thrones, because on one end, I don't want it to end in my life. Number 2, I just kept hearing how it was so bad and what the writers did to it, to the point to where I don't even know if it's worth my time. Shout out to my girlfriend Sharena. She forever scolds me that I need to finish it, but I refuse. And I'll hold out for that for the rest of my days. But Castlevania has the same kind of feeling, that it's a lot of different stories happening at the same time, and people are split up, and the different parties are interacting in different ways. It's still kind of slow paced, but also there's a lot of action. There's a lot more action in this season rather than the season prior, as there was a lot more conniving and a lot more scheming in the second season. But the third season, a lot more action packed, a lot more stuff going on, while there is still kind of hidden, I guess, knowledge happening in the background for majority of the season, until it all kind of came into a big explosive end, and during the season finale. So it was very, very interesting to watch and kind of go through, as you're kind of familiarized with all the characters at this point. And there's, of course, new guys, and you're really not sure who to trust at this point because of so much that happened in season 2. And I guess the best thing about the show, what it has going for you, is that there are villains, or they're bad guys. Like, there are people doing bad things. And this is one thing that Game of Thrones really did really well. There are essentially bad people, right? There's bad people involved. There's people doing bad things. but they also know how to humanize people to the point to where, you care about what's going on. You find different, they're not just, oh, I hate this person. It's more like, ooh, this person is doing bad stuff that I don't enjoy. However, whatever happens to them, I want to see. You're still interested in their characterization, and they've been given a sense of humanity. They're not just like a blind villain, really going around doing bad things, and that's just the end all be all of it. So I might start doing these little recommendation watches. So Castlevania, watch it on Netflix. Avatar: The Last Airbender, watch it. Honestly, I watch it usually on DVD, whenever I choose to go back to it. But, Nickelodeon, whichever streaming service they offer, I'm sure they offer that because it's one of the biggest shows that they've ever created as far as fandoms, and people really love that show. So, watch that. But that's really all I have today for the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I know that's a weird note to end it on, especially since we didn't talk too much about fantasy football near the end there. But just a reminder, stay safe. Continue to stay updated on the latest news about COVID-19 and the coronavirus, and generally try and be healthy and do what's best for yourself and your family and your loved ones, and just check up on people, check up on your neighbors, the elderly especially, as they may not be able to get all the services they may need. But thank you for listening. Don't forget to listen to the rest of our podcasts on the network, and don't forget to follow our social media, so our Instagram, Facebook, and our Twitter. This is Ethan Orfe for the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I'll talk to you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.